Hello and welcome to Keeping It Real, the podcast where we talk to the best people in real estate. This is a part 2 with Theresa, live in person here in Austin, Texas. And this is going to be, I think, the more fun, talking about Austin as a boomtown community. The last episode was about social media for people that aren't really into social media. We had some killer tips in that. That was an excellent episode. It was fun. It was which fun for us was 5 minutes ago and for them was a week ago.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. Okay. So in this episode, what we want to talk about is Austin is one of the fastest growing cities in America, right? And,
yes.
And has been, right? And I want to know what that's been like for you as a realtor broker. But also, we just hit the tech session or whatever we're calling it. And last October, things changed. We were at the Unofficial Real Geeks conference talking about, your strategies on pricing.
Right.
And so I am looking so forward to this conversation of digging into this. So why don't you just start with what you have been seeing over the last X number of years in Austin?
Right about the time the pandemic hit, everybody wanted to move either from their apartment into something bigger, out of states, into other states. And, Texas had a huge boom. And Austin, I think the biggest boom of all of Texas. We had a huge influx. I've been in real estate 23 years, so I was a owner-broker of a huge franchise in 2008 when things really changed quickly.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit, I thought to myself, okay, I went in, I started unsubscribing from monthly fees, and I was like, okay, well, I'll keep Netflix, but Hulu's got to go.
Right.
I was ready to bunker up.
Yep.
I've prepared for this.
Yep.
And when the opposite happened and things just took off and the market got so crazy with demand and lack of inventory, it was astonishing. I know that when, intellectually, I know when a market shifts, it's an opportunity to gain market share, but to see it happen and be the exact opposite of what you expected to have happen was really remarkable. And I credit, my team of agents for rallying and being adaptive. We started, there literally weren't enough houses. And so we changed our whole system where I would stay at the office and my agents would go show the clients, the buyer clients. And then before they even left a house, if they liked it, even remotely liked it, my agent would let me know, and I could immediately start trying to get a hold of the listing agent. And what are we looking at? Are we looking at 50 over the list price, 100 over the list price? And then running the numbers to see what is that appraisal gap going to be. And
wild times
so
in Austin, Texas.
I was now air traffic control,
right.
And because you couldn't even wait to go show a house and come back and think the numbers through, and the pricing had the list price was not relevant to what the sales price was going to be. So you had to do so much extra research, and you really had to research the next recent house that went under contract, which you don't know the sold price yet because you don't know the contract price. So then you'd have to try to track down that listing agent and see if they would, butter you up to, there are people agents delivering bottles of wine to listing agents to find out what a house was pending for. So they would know how to write the next offer for the house in that neighborhood. That wasn't bad.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, I want to rewind and talk about when things started taking off and what you saw in your analytics. But man, talk about there's a buzzword that I like. It's information asymmetry, right? And it's
yes.
Who has information and who doesn't.
Right.
And that is a side of this boom that I hadn't even thought about, because I know I had experienced the competitive offers and heard about that, but the side of it of actually still allowing your clients to make informed decisions.
Right. Because if you're a very data-driven agent like I am, to not have accurate data, to know that list price is not at all relevant to anything. It's a suggestion. And so what is relevant, and how can I get something to some kind of information to formulate advice out of, and then accurately predict, yes, you're going to pay this much for the house, and the appraisal gap is going to be likely this much. So I had to say, well, what is it likely to appraise for? Not just what do they have to offer to get it. It was so much work. Much work.
Right. And doing it real time.
Yeah. And meanwhile, your phone is ringing off the hook with people from other states who want to invest in Austin. And you're like, oh God, I want to help everyone, but are you real? Do you know? Do you have what it takes to play here? It was a lot of hard vetting. And the hardest thing was I did have a couple buyers that were in the process of getting pre-approved or just gonna pull the trigger in the spring, and they completely got priced out of the market almost overnight. And I had to tell two of them, like, I literally can't help you. And that's the real hard downside about being a boom market is we have a lot of people that the dream of the promise of homeownership is now that much farther away.
I talk to a lot of people where it's like, oh, I'm from Austin, right? I've lived here forever. It's like, or I used to CrossFit up in Hutto.
Yeah.
And it's like you'd meet the locals and they're like, even when I moved here in 2013, they're like, oh, you're one of those people moving in from the coast. It's like, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
But I didn't move here during the boomtown. It
Right.
was, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Rewinding,
Okay.
So like if we get, this is sort of like an episode of Last of Us where we see like what happened during the apocalypse and then after and then before, right? So like let's go to the before. Like,
Okay.
So when things started heating up, like what were you seeing on your Real Geek site? What were you seeing in your analytics? Like when you because you went from like scratching off like subscriptions, I don't need Hulu,
right?
To like it's real.
Houston, we have a problem. Yeah. It was a great problem to have.
Yep.
I'd be lying if I told you I even looked at my analytics because I did not have time.
Yeah.
I was working, 16 to 18 hours. Everything just took so much time. So I did not look at analytics because I had so much incoming volume that.
So your KPI was how much your phone was ringing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was nonstop. And the text messages. I did at one point think like, could someone just have a text autoresponder that said no more text today? It was a
No
lot of it was a lot of
Yeah.
incoming.
Right. What was the interval between, hey, we're locked down, and like my phone is denial of service, people wanting to move here?
Right. I know for a lot of people this is a sore subject because I have professional network all across the country, and I know a lot of people were very their businesses were really harmed by different restrictions, and Texas was not very restricted, and I would say, I was selling that first bit of March, even when things locked down. I think here mid-March. I was selling in March. I had a whole box of gloves because it was before we really knew anything. So I was like taking the gloves off in between every house I showed, and then I'd have all these gloves. I'm like, should I wash them?
Well, it's funny that we're talking about it this time of year too, because I remember one of the things that that brought it home for me is like, wait, they canceled South by Southwest.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa.
Yeah. So so I will say, I had the fortune to have clients the whole time, but I would say by end of May, that's when it was, this is going to go a different direction than I expected. That was busy.
Totally going nuts.
Yeah.
So you shifted your process. So, it's actually almost surprising to me that you were even taking clients to go look at homes, because I've heard stories of, people that are like, well, if you like the photos in the MLS, we should just like put in a.
Well, we did. We absolutely wrote, we closed several homes for people that never saw them, some that were in Austin and just never saw them, some that did never come to the state and bought sight unseen, some of them investors, some of them to live in. I will say that's a huge amount of trust, and I did not recommend for my agents at my brokerage that we sell something just from pictures. Like they needed to go and at least do a video tour for the person, or I had some where they weren't, the buyer wasn't here, but they had a cousin's friend from junior high that lived here, so they looked at the house
before
with me.
The pandemic. Had you ever done a video tour?
I had done video tours for investors on occasion. It was not a normal part of my business where it's like, okay, I need to get a system for this. I need to make this super smooth. No.
And how frequent was it after?
Very frequent, because even some people, as I said, that were in Austin, but maybe they worked, that house is not going to be available by the time you're off work. So I'm going to go look at it at 10 a.m., video tour it. You're going to tell me by noon if we're, and I'm going to tell you what I suggest you offer if you like it. And you're going to tell me by noon what we're offering, because we have to have that offer written right now.
Insanity.
Yeah.
It's absolute insanity.
I like things fast paced. So on a certain level, it was addictive, the adrenaline rush, and I was very glad I didn't have small children at home during that time, because I just literally devoted everything to the market.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
I won't even say to my clients, which is really unfair, but it is accurate. If I'm being really accurate, the market consumed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How many video tours now is that like still a common thing? Did that stick, or is it just like, okay, now that we've kind of like maybe corrected a little bit?
Austin still has a lot of buyers coming in, a lot of buyer interest from other areas. So I would say in my brokerage right now, I have 2 people working with out-of-state buyers, and I just got another referral from an agent in another state. It's her sister moving here. So I don't think for that one I'll do video tours because she's coming in person for a 1-week visit. I'm hoping to lock something down when she's here. But no, I mean, it's a market where we have a lot of influx. So I think video tours, it's also a great tool, and I think people enjoy it. So I think they're here to stay.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned investors, because that was my experience with video tours. That I was an investor.
They're generally not something. It's not like a videographer because it's not my listing. If it was my listing, it shifted taking listings because I knew my buyer pool was not necessarily going to see the house. So, you pay for additional photos, a video tour, a floor plan that can be created online, anything to make that house show better for someone who's not there in person. But for my buyer tours, they're usually a little more informal. I've already met with the buyer, in person or on Zoom. So it's generally, FaceTime, or FaceTime's not always reliable that you'll have service and, vacant houses or whatnot. So sometimes I'll just do a video, pop it up on YouTube and send them the link.
I want to put a time capsule together here for someone that watches this in like 2 years, something like that.
Well, you could already watch it right now. It's so different.
Well, so Keeping It Real. I mean, Keeping It Real has been around for like 7 years.
Yeah.
So
but the market has changed so much already that you don't have to wait 2 more years for it to feel very different than what I'm describing. It changed already.
Okay, so before we make the shift,
okay,
as
we're still
everyone
in
euphemistically calls it,
yes,
right? Talk to me about like some of the actual tempo that was happening. What was like actual time intervals between something coming on the market and something getting sold, and talk to me about the overbidding situation that was happening.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you from my experience as a listing agent. Okay, I pride myself in knowing my numbers, being able to research, data thoroughly, and knowing my own personal neighborhood I've lived in for over a decade. I know this stuff. And I had a house go on the market. It was slightly unique in that it was a 2-story of a smaller square footage. That square footage in my neighborhood would normally be a 1-story. And it had not been cosmetically upgraded, although it did have upgrades like HVAC and roof. Sellers were engineers, they valued different things. So it wasn't
the perfect listing.
Yeah, it was not a lot of comps for that sort of thing. I took the next closest sales price and added, I think, $50,000 to it, because when I took the next sales price and looked at what was active, there's literally nothing.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I mean, I don't like shooting in the dark, but we'll try this.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. I can't tell you. I think I received 18 offers. Oh, and I changed my whole listing, the whole flow of listing a property to be listings go live on a Thursday. That way, everybody can have the weekend to see it. You just collect offers all weekend. And then Monday at like 10 a.m. is your offer deadline, which really means noon because people slow.
Yeah.
And then by Monday, I'd have the whole afternoon set aside to go through the offers, go back and forth with anybody that had a good one. We're trying to massage this, massage that. And then Monday night, sellers would meet with me to present the offers. So that was just the rhythm. Any weekend for 2 years, basically, if I was on the boat, didn't matter. Still had to have my phone because the offers are coming in. I mean, it's a fine problem to have, but wow, the volume. So this house had I want to say 18 offers, and it ended up selling for $100,000 over the list price that I just randomly tacked quite a bit of money on. There was no reason. I had agents call me and yell at me for pricing the home so low. What? I there's no evidence to price it differently. And I did throw money on anyway. You think it should be. My sellers were thoroughly satisfied.
Oh yeah.
But the number of calls you get for something like that, not just buyers calling, but agents calling. And
Well, the wild thing is, like,
Yeah.
you're pricing it higher, so
Yes.
there's still, like, the appraisal is probably not
Oh,
changed
no,
too
the
much in this-
appraiser wasn't gonna-
So you
yeah.
still have the gap.
Yeah.
But basically, what the person that's saying that, or the person that calls and says, you priced it too low, is basically saying you included a bunch of these people that my person who has more buying power, like, shouldn't be competing with.
Or their buyers may have been right at that price, so they think they have a shot at it.
Right.
So, but that's not, I can't help that.
Yeah.
Again,
Right.
we were, all running behind the market.
Yeah.
The market ran all of us.
Exactly. Okay. And that was, like, not uncommon, right? Because you talked about your cadence and the way that you were handling it for 2 years, right? So you had a system in place.
You had to.
Yeah.
And 1 week I had 2 listings go live at the same time in the same neighborhood. Oh my Lord. Don't do that either. 'Cause it was a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So fast forward, things have been slowing down in Austin.
Oh, that is a polite way to put it.
Okay.
I thought we were being real here.
Yeah, we're being real.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So tell me what's happened.
So last spring when the interest rates started going up, it stopped in Austin. And
Interesting.
when I say it, I mean new home search leads, new hits on the website. People will tell you it didn't. There's a lot of optimism. I'm overall very optimistic about the Austin market. Don't get me wrong. But because we had been, like so out in front, running so fast and hot, that it was like a train drove into a brick wall.
Yeah.
There was no, like, you took your foot off the gas and it coasted. It was a stop, is how it felt to a practitioner.
Right.
Yes, there were still people transacting business. I was one of them. It's not doom and gloom. But the entire feel of things changed.
Yes. And I think that you were on a panel at the Unofficial Real Geeks conference.
Right.
And I felt like there was almost a gasp. And I certainly, producer Sean over here was referring to his notes, and we were talking about what you had said. And I, from memory, verbatim knew what you had said. And we compared it to his notes. It was the same. And you said something to the effect of, like, if the house is on the market this long, I cut the price. And I want you to talk about that. But also the thing, and one of the reasons I wanted to set up the context for how hot the market was is people were not ready for that. I think both real estate people and the customers. Right.
And I think that, a lot of realtors, people that have been in business a long time, have solid books of business. When the pandemic frenzy happened, I know plenty of full-grown realtors that were like, I just think I'm not going to do this right now. I'll work a couple of my referrals, but I'm not really going after business. I don't want to work in this market. And from where I sit, like, kudos to you. You have the luxury of sitting this one out. I do not. And so I had to find a way to make it work for me.
Yeah.
But definitely there were realtors that just didn't even want to play in this market.
Interesting. So they'd just rather leave.
Or just take a coast. They have investments or alternative sources of income, I'm sure. So, good for them. But for those of us that, because they probably had a similar feeling to me at first, is my data is irrelevant. How do I advise people? And I figured out ways to get data, to extrapolate data. If you didn't want to do that, you didn't have to. I know many that didn't.
Talk to me about...
But at that Real Geeks conference... I remember the panel too, and I don't think the shift in the market or the reaction to interest rate hikes, I don't think it had hit very many places yet. Because I remember a couple people kind of looking at me like, well, it's not like that here. And I'm like, talk to me in a month.
Yeah, right, exactly. Because we were so hot that the simmer had to come down.
Well, and the media loves a disaster.
Right.
So, look at who's the best at anything. The best singer, the best actor, the best real estate market. And the slightest showing that something is going to change, the media loves to ram that through. And that, of course, kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy then. So a lot of people responded to the media saying, oh, the bubble's bursting, by saying, oh, whoa, we better pull back or we better hold off. And, then of course, what happens?
Like people don't need to live anywhere anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so when that happened, I like I said, it made it through
Yep.
2008. I won't say unscathed because it was a very, I worked in a part of the country that had a lot of arms, a lot of military, a lot of forced transfer. It was devastating to the community I worked at that time, much more so than it was here in Austin, at least by the numbers. I didn't live here then. So I, at the same time, I'm optimistic I'll prepare for
Lewis
the
McCord,
worst, right? Yeah, Joint Base Lewis McCord is where I worked.
Northwest people.
So, so when the slowdown happened here, I really, you can choose to say, oh, well, the bubble burst, it's over. Yep. But I just looked and I said, there's too many people still moving here. There's too many jobs still available. I just don't think this is the end. Like, this is not turn out the lights. So I really, chose to play a longer game.
Yep.
I also analyze my fellow Americans, and I don't believe they're very patient people. So I'm like, those couples starting out that wanted to buy a house, they might have renewed their apartment lease one more year. They're not going to renew it 2 years. Also, you look at the rents in Austin, they're very high too. So the gap between you'll save money by renting isn't really, that's not really a true statement for most of Austin. So I'm like, I think this is a pause, not a stop. And so I carried on with everything I was doing with that mentality, pause, not a stop. And I just kept, delivering value to my community, finding ways to, stay in touch with people that maybe they're legitimately not going to buy right now, because if your interest rate was 3%, 6% sounds really high, but after 6 months, 6% seems kind of normal now.
I want to come back to like the specifics of your pricing strategy.
Okay.
And what's changed, but first I want to hit you with my personal theory that recessions in the United States are going to shorten because all of us that have grown up on the internet have shorter attention spans, and we get over it
like
faster.
I said, we're not patient people.
It's like watching the news this time versus like 2008. 2008 it seemed like we were in it for the long haul, and it was completely obvious, from the beginning. And I remember trying to manage the businesses that I was involved in at that point, to set us up where we were going to be good. Right. And this time it's very interesting that people are like, are we, aren't we, maybe it'll be over next week. And it's like, it's not a thunderstorm. Right.
And real estate is a long sales cycle anyway. I mean, it's not like someone walks into a boutique and walks out with a house. I mean, so you have to be set up to weather some shifts.
Do you think buyers are getting to the point where they kind of want to make decisions that way, though? Like, especially as you start to work with like newer people that are starting to buy houses.
Yeah.
Younger people that are starting to buy houses.
I will say that demographic tends to do a lot of research already. So they'll come to me with a lot of knowledge and already know I want this and this and I do not want that. So it's easier to find what they want. They don't need to see 30. If 3 meet their criteria, show me 3. So they're not impressed by having more options.
This is a great insight, because it sounds like to the real estate professional, it appears more transactional, but really there's been so much more preparation work that has gone in prior to the conversation.
A lot of first-time buyers, typically younger, meet with them either in person or on Zoom, and it's very common that they have a spreadsheet where they've already identified certain criteria and or even a map with like a geographic area to something that's important to them, a church or a workout gym or whatever even a dog park, whatever their thing is, they want to be within this much radius of that thing, but they'll have it already for me instead of me having to do like a typical buyer consult, right? Well, it's important to you. What will you like?
Do you think that extends the nurture period? So like when someone...
No. I think it shortens it.
Shortens it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they've just done that even before they become a lead in your system. So I was thinking like, oh, well, maybe that is why like a nurture period on an internet lead might extend, because the buyer's doing all of that research.
That could be, but
and then,
in the background. Yeah. But okay, so perhaps, I don't know if I guess I could go along with that, because they haven't been willing to make meaningful contact with you or allow you to make meaningful contact with them, because they're going to be ready when they're ready.
Right.
right? Like, it's nice that you're reaching out and all, but we don't need you to make our matrix. We just need to get a time when we're both together and can sit down and focus on this.
Definitely. Okay. Back to pricing.
Okay.
So you said basically if the house was on for a certain period of time, we can refresh what that was, then you cut it for like by 20%, and coming off a market that had been in, auction bidding situations.
Okay, so I remember the house you're talking about now, because it took me a minute. I'm like, I know I was on stage at that conference. I know I said some things. So, okay, that specific house, I dropped it by 20%.
Yes.
A house in my neighborhood that I've lived in for over a decade. I know like the back of my hand. It was a certain size house with a pool.
Yeah.
So pretty specific to comp.
Right.
Like, we know how to find a price on this. And when we priced it, we went slightly under what the price should be because we were factoring in the change in interest rates, the shift of buyer confidence. My client is someone I had known through the neighborhood for a long time. She really was, very agreeable with my leading on the pricing strategy.
How long had she lived in the house?
She had lived in the house since it was built, so probably like 15 years.
Okay, so a lot of appreciation already.
Oh, yeah. So she wasn't, obviously no seller's like, oh, just price it at whatever, I don't care.
Right.
I mean, that's just not a thing for people.
Right.
But she knew she was going to be fine financially, whichever way it went. But she had been laid off her job, which isn't why she was selling. She was selling to downsize. The job layoff came kind of as a surprise. So she did have a little more financial... Yeah, plot twist, exactly. Yeah. That happened during the phase we were preparing the home for market. So she did have her eye on the finances. Let's not make a mistake. But the house hit the market. There were 4 or 5 others that also had pools of a similar size and age, and it didn't sell. And we had, probably about 7 showings, which, again, 6 months earlier would have been like the first evening.
Right.
Literally. But I had prepared her for that. We had enough lead time to know it wasn't going to be like that. But we didn't have any offers. And it was about 3 weeks in, and she goes, I don't want to be that house. Because there was one other one that had been on the market for like 200 days that we'd been watching, or 180 days or something. Maybe not that long, but a long time. And she goes, I do not want to be that house. I don't want to have that level of uncertainty. What is it going to take to sell this house? I was like, well, since nothing else is moving with a pool or without a pool, you got to come down. And I mean, like down. I think we were just over $1 million, and we dropped it with a number that started with 8.
Wow.
And
every time you're talking about a comma, it's huge, like
I mean,
mental hurdles.
It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a mental hurdle for me too. But we dropped it to a number that started with 8, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get multiple offers. It's going to end up with a 9. It's going to be fine anyway because I'm vested in this.
Right.
Nope. 1 offer. 1.
At or below?
At. Thank God. But 1. And of those other 4 or 5 homes that were our competition, 2 others ended up selling over a month later after we closed. So a long time.
Yeah.
And 2 others withdrew. They haven't come back on the market.
Wow.
So my client is happy with how it ended up. But that's just an example of, we started talking seriously about selling probably 6 months before, because she wanted to wait till her son, graduated, did the things. And, it would have been a very different scenario for her. But you can't time everything.
Right.
You can only respond to what's real and happening in real time.
So what's been happening in the market now? Well,
I am so happy to say that as of about January, analytics on my website, new buyer registrations, totally up. So grateful. I have not changed my my ad spend or what I'm targeting in the ads. So it's literally just the market. At first I thought, well, maybe this is people bored. They're home on, after Christmas and the holidays. And I was like, please let it stay. And it has. It's a steady stream. So that is huge. And my lender partners say loan apps are up. I mean, we've got multiple buyers acting, and people are not starting their conversation by like, what about interest rates? And to me, that is, in my mind, it justifies what I said about Americans have, no patience, and they're not going to wait.
Now
forever.
It's baked in. They're like gotten used to the idea that the interest rates are where they are.
Right. Now, for some people, it practically will, it will in function prevent them from buying as much home as they might have.
Right.
But it's not I'm not getting conversations that lead with, but I'll never pay that for an interest rate. Like, you heard some of those earlier.
Are you still having to, like, how long are homes sitting on the market?
It depends. We're back to having to do really, really detailed research. I mean, I love research anyway.
Yep.
I love pricing data. So in our brokerage, we've started doing pricing council, where we meet once a week. And whether you are, and obviously they can always call me because I'm their broker, but pricing council is a group. And we all it's a workshop. We bring our laptops in. We meet in person. If you have to Zoom in, you can. But basically, whoever emails me first, that's the property we start with. Sometimes it's, they're getting ready to write an offer for a buyer and want everybody to say, like, do you think the list price is good, or you think we can shave some off? Or you're getting ready to list a home. So you're like, okay, here's, my amateur photos of the home because I don't have professional yet. But here's the gist of what it is. What do you guys think I should price it at? And so it's a way to really turn our attention to that, because you'll see just wild swings of things that are on the market for 200 days, like they should have been reduced or taken off or something done different, and they're just sitting there. You can't necessarily rely on that as a data point because it's just sitting there. And then you get other homes that, if it's priced right and staged well, I mean, it'll get multiple offers still. So we are in a market of like haves and have-nots in a way. Like if you have a listing agent who's paying attention versus one who's not, you have a much different experience as a seller. So I can't tell you the days on market, because there's some that just go right away and some that just sit.
Right, but I guess it's interesting that even that is happening, where it seems like there's competition and like the market trying to find an equilibrium versus, back in October when it's like, okay, interest rates are going up where they were basically at zero before, and now people are having to adjust to this whole new world. And it just like slams on the brakes on everything.
Well, the other thing that it's been enough time since the interest rates went up and the freight train hit the brick wall, and you can analyze, well, what homes did sell? What did they do? And what are the patterns there? And I'm advising all my sellers, if your home is not market ready, we're not going to market, because buyers have so many choices. There's plenty of inventory in most areas and price ranges, and they're not unaware they're paying X amount in interest, so they are choosy about which house they pick. So I had a seller that's going on the market this Thursday, and the home was built in 98, and it had one of those 2-story banister that goes up with the white paint, and the paint was peeling.
You know what? As a
places.
resident of Austin, this is actually kind of comforting, because it seemed like during the full swing of the boom, it's like MVH, minimum viable house. Like, and if it was technically a house,
it could have been a doll house,
right?
A dog house.
It would be like someone would show up and be like, "Here's $1 million," and
people have come to their senses, which is good news for buyers. Sellers, not all of them have caught up with this.
Yeah, I can see that, but it is nice that it's like, oh, okay, so if you're gonna sell your house, you should try.
Right? Yeah, you do. So like in a year ago, I would have told her, don't worry about some of that chippy paint on the banister that's peeling off the bottom. Like, no one's really gonna stand there and look at the banister anyway. It's not the center of the house. This time I was like, no, we gotta have that fixed before we go to market.
Polish
Sorry.
it. Yeah, that's very good. I feel like I want to send a camera crew to your pricing council.
Oh, you should. We had one today. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
We did one that was a $1.2 million condo downtown that my client is trying to make sure he writes a great offer for his buyer client. So it wasn't our listing. We're just trying to vet it.
Yep.
Then one was a 3.2 in Kyle, and one was a 2.5 in the neighborhood that feeds to the high school in my neighborhood. So a real variety, and then everybody kind of brings their perspective, because some agents, they're really focused on, those schools are better than these schools, so let's only compare to the schools. And some are like, well, it might just be the high school that matters. Let's look. So you get like different input. So our clients end up with this really robust analytical. It's not just one person's opinion. And then one of my agents is a licensed appraiser.
This might be like
too.
the big takeaway for all the team leads
Pricing
out there listening to pricing council. So how often do you do it?
Well, right now we're doing it weekly.
And everyone on your team.
It's optional.
It's optional.
But even agents that don't have a new listing coming or don't have something to talk about, I'm really encouraging them to, because if you can't price, how are you giving advice? Like, this is the best way to know how to advise a client. And when you can speak to a client confidently about this is the offer, this is why your offer's good, everything goes smoother in a transaction.
What do you think the takeaway is for the people that are participating in this more frequently? Is it confidence in the price that they chose, or does frequently the price change after being exposed to the pricing council?
I think it depends. We'll also do pricing council on a listing that hasn't sold, like maybe you need to advise on a price reduction. So I think that the takeaway for the people, I think it's just having a team approach.
Yeah.
A lot of times, especially in a shifting market where you ran those numbers and that house should have sold at 700,000, but here you're sitting at 670 and it hasn't sold yet. It can be a difficult place to have a conversation with those sellers and say, the pictures look great. You did what I said to get ready. My marketing is everywhere, but the market has gone down 3% in the month since you listed. That's not an easy conversation, especially if you're a newer agent and you're not as data driven. So I think coming together and really doing that work as a group, it empowers the agent to have a more meaningful conversation, a more confident conversation with their client.
Right. So it's almost better than just like giving the agent, here's some sales training, like, learn how to make better calls.
Oh, it's just a completely different thing. I mean, if you don't ever have clients, then you don't really know how to price.
Sure.
But if you're newer to the business, you don't have maybe a steady stream of clients. Well, I mean, I think this happens a lot with some of the listings that I see sitting. If the last time you put a house on the market was 6 months ago, well, things have changed, Norma,
Right.
So it keeps us all current in the market.
Yeah. Man. There we go. That's awesome advice.
Okay. So another thing that helped me adjust quicker to the market shift than I think some other agents I'm aware of is I'm part of a mastermind with agents from around the country.
Yeah.
And having that perspective of different markets from agents I trust, it really does help. It helps you not believe like the media hype in your own market. Because if you're like, oh, Austin's doomed, which you could easily have said from a couple of those articles, but you're hearing from agents you trust that they're also seeing a slowdown. It's like, okay, well, this is, not that you want to have everybody see a slowdown, but it's not just your market, you need to have multiple data points and perspective. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So using your nationwide mastermind to calibrate like what's happening. Did that help you not just guide like what was happening in your market, but also like business decisions, like investment decisions you were making?
Yeah, for sure. You kind of see like who might be ahead of you in a trend, what markets are trending faster or slower, or what tips first. My wife owns a real estate brokerage in Tacoma, Washington. And so, we can often see like something start here and it's slightly later to get to her market because she's right outside. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. But like, because she's just outside of Seattle, it's a slightly smaller market. So it'll start here. So you'll see like those kind of canary in a coal mine trends. Yeah.
Well, and again, there's a lot of like weird parallels between what's happening in Austin and what's happening, in that sort of I-5 corridor.
So what I call it is, some people call it the circuit of like the boom cities.
Yeah.
But if you've ever read the book, or if you haven't, you should really read the book, Creative Class by Richard Florida.
I'm going to read it
now. It's dated now. It's dated now. He's written some other things, but he really has, he's a sociologist, I believe, but his research is about, where a city attracts creative talent, a city grows and is thriving. So if you look at the cities that we name that are these boom towns, they also are very known for having creative and talent and that sort of thing. And that's why it's so important for cities to create programs and scaffolds to keep creatives in the city, which again in Austin is we're at a real tipping point, a challenge with that right now. So I was just appointed to the Commission for Economic Development for the city of Austin. So that's one thing I want to really focus on, working within that group to ensure that we keep Austin a creative class.
Right. I love that. That's really cool.
Birdwalk.
Producer Sean's going to love that too. Yeah. What changes were you making to your business when the shift started to happen?
Well, I mean, my biggest goal as a business owner is to stay nimble. I think I said that in '08, I was a large franchise holder and I had 14,000 square feet of commercial space personally guaranteed in 2 locations. And our number of agents went from, here to here very quickly. And it was not a good time. So in this iteration of my business, I keep things very lean, very nimble. I don't like to make long-term commitments to, staff or marketing. I vet what I spend money on very carefully. I hold it accountable, and I just am very careful not to have overcommitted my spending. That's very, very common for realtors. And, I know you're in the business of selling things to realtors, and, and I'm not saying you do this, but there's so many pitches that come at me with, one commission will pay for the whole thing. And it's like, oh, well, that's not,
right.
Just because we can make a lot of money in any one commission doesn't mean that's what should govern our decisions. We should look at, what our spending is bringing back to our business and what level of return.
I liked what you just said about the battle scars from '08 informing the core structure of your business so that in this situation, you were already prepared.
Right. I didn't have to worry about, and I have reserves and things I've worked really hard to put in place because, I had '08 and then I come off a divorce and, it was rough financially for a number of years. So those things that is just important to me, that I have reserves and enough ability to change course that I don't ever feel locked in. And that allows me to keep current with the market and not feel crushed by it.
Right. What are the things you'll never let go, though?
Well, let's see. What is integral to my business? I think that things would have to get really bad before I'd let go of my VIP club. And that's for past clients and people that refer me business. Because even though I do have my ad budget for my Real Geeks pay-per-click, and I love meeting new people and new prospective buyers that way, it would be remiss if I didn't look at this other group of people that already know me, trust me, and refer me business and spend some money on them too, right? Because that is a source of warm referrals that, the business comes at you a little easier than converting internet leads.
And I want to comment on this because, I'm a marketing professional. And so, and survived 2008, running ad budgets for companies. And so ad budgets are scalable.
Sure.
Right. So when things are hot, you put money in there. And the other thing, especially with Google, is the volume's got to be there. Right. So you can't spend money on searches when the users aren't searching.
Right.
Right. So that's an element. But I think I like the other thing is a lot of times for Real Geeks, being a CRM and a website, I like to talk about building a lifetime pipeline.
Right.
And so it makes perfect sense that you would hang on to your VIP club because that is your lifetime pipeline.
Right. But even so, and because I have been, judicious about my spending, when the market slowed down, I didn't turn off my pay-per-click. There wasn't as much coming in, granted, but I know, there's likely going to be some agents that don't have the ability to renew their licenses. And I don't want to turn my lead source off when the opportunity to gain market share is there.
And this is the other thing. I think I was running around the Real Geeks conference saying that, it's like this crisis is an opportunity. Be ready to seize the market share. So I love that you were thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any final thoughts on this topic?
Well, Austin is still a great place to live. So when your clients are looking to buy or invest, maybe job transfer to Austin, give me a call.
Unless you're trying to go out to eat, in which case don't make reservations at the place I want to go.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Just build yourself an outdoor pizza oven.
Tell us where people can find you.
Oh, so I'm at letsmoveaustin.com. My cell's 512-297-3442. Don't text me all the time though.
Sounds good. Thanks, Theresa, so much for both episodes. This was great. This was a lot of fun doing this live in person, not on Zoom. It was great.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.